So we are here today for the PhD defense of Gregoire Abessolo, and I will very of this thesis, which consists of 9 persons. So we have the 3 supervisors, Magnus Larsson, who is professor at the University of Lund in Sweden and expert in coastal processes. Raphael Almar, researcher at IRD at Lagos, expert in nearshore hydromorphodynamics, and also Bruno Castel, researcher at Epoch in Bordeaux, and expert in coastal dynamics and video systems. We have also the 2 reporters, Yann Balouin, researcher at BRGM, expert in shore and coastal geomorphology, Kwasi Apining-Ado, associate professor at the University of Ghana, expert in coastal processes and vulnerability. We have also one guest, Minette Tomedi, professor at the University of Douala. And finally, we have also 3 examiners, Olusegun Dada, researcher at the University of Technology of Niger, and who is currently in sabbatical year at Lagos, and who is coastal geologist. Edouard Anthony, professor at CEREJ in Aix-en-Provence, expert in coastal risks, and myself, who is professor at the University of Toulouse and expert in coastal ocean, sea level, and dynamics. So thank you. So Gregoire, we should start now, and you have 45 minutes from now to share your main research findings with the jury and all the people who are in the room and or online. Can you start now? Is it okay? Raphaël?
Vous l'entendez ou non?
J'entends rien.
Non. Les étudiants là n'ont pas de masque. Non. C'est en France. C'est pas un but. Nous là-bas, on a des
Hello, do you understand me? Ah, là, ça marche, non?
Ouais, moi je t'entends bien là.
Ah oui, ok. T'es le seul ou tout le monde entend? Everybody can hear us? Ok, perfect. Ok, thank you. So can you go back to... Thank you, Madame the President. Can I mute the microphone? See? Can I mute the microphone? Est-ce qu'ils peuvent couper leur...
Can you turn off your microphone, please?
Then you have no questions.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Madam the President of the jury. Thank you, dear member of the jury, for giving me the opportunity to present the result of my thesis work. First, I apologize for my poor English. So, yeah, it is not my native language, so I will try to do my best. This thesis was carried out under the supervision of Raphaël Anma, Magnus Larsson, and Bruno Castel here in Toulouse, in Lund, at Lund University and at the University of Bordeaux. And this thesis was funded by the Arts Fellowship Program from IRD. And this thesis was also supported by the University of Cameroon with Professor Minette Mezi and Dr. Raphaël Onguene. As everybody knows, among the 20 coastal cities around the world, 15 of them are located on coastal zone. And among all the coastal area, most of the sandy beach are densely occupied. As you can observe on this figure, if we focus on the African continent, most of the beach are eroding, as you can observe with the erosive trend. In green, you have the accreting area, and in red, you have the eroding area. So, as you can observe, the beach are still under influence on several parameters. If we focus on the bight of Benin, you can remark that there is an intensification of the coastal risks to people and properties. So the aim of this work is to understand what are the primary driver of shoreline change on the sandy beach in the world. So what are the main factors that can affect the coast? First, we have the waves, which are the primary driver of shoreline change around on the sandy beach. Waves can affect the coast at short-term time scale with the storm and a long-term time scale with the climatic mode. And waves also present a high variability at seasonal scale. The second group of parameters are the change in sea level, as you can observe on the slide. We have short-term time scale variation in sea level, the tide. We have long-term time scale, the sea level rise due to climatic change. And we also have the intra-seasonal to seasonal variation in sea level anomaly. The third group of factors that can affect the coast are the man-made intervention with coastal structures such as harbor and dams on the different rivers that reduce the sediment input on the coast. So these factors can act together to affect the coast. So among all these factors, we need to identify the importance of each factor in the observed coastal change. If we focus on the intra-seasonal to seasonal variation of sea level anomaly, we have several issues. The first issue is that it is difficult to measure or to monitor the sea level at the coast due to the fact that ultimately perform well on open ocean and not at the coastal zone. And tide gauge are sometimes limited to protected area, such as deep water with breakwater, and on tide-dominated area. It is difficult to use such device in sandy beach that are dominated by waves. And if it is difficult to monitor the sea level anomaly, it is also difficult to apprehend the impact of the sea level on the coast. If we look at the interaction of these different factors on the beach, we usually assess the coastal change through long-term shoreline evolution when we look at long-term scale. But when accessing the shoreline evolution, we are limited to the fact that we don't have any information about the bathymetry, and the unknown bathymetry limit the capacity of the coastal models. Video provides an excellent alternative to monitor at high frequency the beach profile variation. In another point, when we want to apprehend the change or the process that affects the coast, we use some models, but with the model, we are sometimes limited to the fact that models usually simplify the small-scale process, such as sea level variation, for example. So we need further effort to fully integrate the small-scale process in long-shore and large-scale, in long-term and large-scale modeling. So the goal of this thesis is to answer the question, what are the primary drivers of shoreline change? This question is to predict the long-term variation of the shoreline position and the beach state. To answer this question, we have four different objectives. The first is to quantify the beach response to wave forcing. The second is to monitor the total sea level variation and all its contribution and its impacts on the beach. The third objective is to identify all the coastal structure that could affect the shoreline evolution. And finally, we can use a model to model the shoreline evolution and the beach state. So in this talk, I'm going to present you the main data and method that I used and the main result I obtained. To carry out this study, we choose to work in the Bight of Benin. The Bight of Benin is representative of all the different kinds of forcing, waves, sea levels, and human settlement. So if we really focus in the Bight of Benin, we have the two types of waves. We have swell waves and we have wind waves. The combination of the two types of waves leads to one of the biggest littoral drift in the world, as you can observe with the white arrow. And in addition, we also have the sediments coming from all the different rivers in the region. As you can observe, Anthony and Bibi showed that the Volta River was the most important fluvial source in the area, south in the area. In addition to river and waves, we also have the variation in sea level. We have strong seasonal variation with an amplitude of 30 centimeters, and we also have strong intra-seasonal variation due to Kelvin wave, as you can observe with the black arrow on the slide. So there you have all the different natural forcing that can affect the coast in the Bight of Benin. In this Bight of Benin, we also have anthropogenic forcing with several harbors, as you can observe on the figure, with several dams, with two dams on the main provider of sediment, the Volta River. We also have one dam on the Mono River, and several field of growings, updrift and downdrift, all the different harbors. Knowing that in this area, coasts are affected by natural and anthropogenic forcing, we need now to assess the impact of natural forcing on the coast. For that, we first try to monitor and to monitor the different natural forcing on the coast. To do that, a field experiment was carried out at Grand Popo. Grand Popo is located between Lomé and Cotonou. It is the city is far away from these two main towns to be considered as under the influence mainly of natural forcing. So three main types of data were collected. Topographic data with a differential GPS, bathymetric data with a bathymetric sonar, and the variation in water level with an NDCP that was moved at 10-meter depth from the coast. Here you can see some pictures that were collected during the field experiment. In addition to the field experiment, a video system has been installed in Grand Popo since 2013, and the video system collects three types of different images: raw images, Timex images, and timestamp images. The Timex images is obtained by averaging all the raw images during 50 minutes, and the timestamp image is obtained by stacking one cross-shore line from all the different raw images, as you can observe on the slide. When collecting all these kind of images, we need now to convert the image from pixel coordinates to real coordinate to geographic coordinates. To achieve this issue, we collect 20 ground control points on the beach, and those, as you can see on the first panel of the figure, and those ground control points were used to construct the pixel to real coordinate matrix, as you can observe on the second panel. Using this matrix, on the panel, you can see that on the x-axis we have the pixel, and on a y-axis we have the meters. With this matrix, we can now rectify our images, and an example of a rectified images is shown in the third panel, where all the information are now corrected in meters. This process induces some error, and we compute this error at Grand Popo. We obtain an average error of less than 5 meters for the pixel footprint. And this error was computed in an area of interest where we assume that this error is minimal. After converting the image from pixel to real coordinate, we therefore need to select the image that are relevant to processing for further processing. So due to fog, to dew, or to the sunlight, some images sometimes are very bad. So we define a simple criterion based on the pixel intensity due to the wave transformation in the subzone. So as you can observe on the picture, when the image is good, the width of the pixel intensity should be narrow, and when the image is bad, we have a bigger width of the pixel intensity. This helps us to select the image that are relevant for further process. After selecting the good image, we can now extract the useful information, such as the shoreline or the bathymetry. To extract the shoreline, we just use a simple approach based on the difference of color between the water and the beach, and the sand, if you want. The sand have a main red component, and the water have a main blue or green component. With the difference between the two, we can derive the shoreline, as you can observe on the figure, where the blue line represent the shoreline at the low tide, and the red line represent the shoreline at high tide. If you want to derive the intertidal profile, we just need to extract the shoreline at different level at different tide level, and after by interpolating the different shoreline location at different time of the tide. But sometimes when we have less condition of waves and tide, some error can occur. To remove the influence of the error, we just need to long-shore average the shoreline location to minimize those errors. After extracting the wave salinity, we can now after extracting the shoreline, we can now extract the bathymetry, the depth, the water depth. And to extract the water depth, we have two main approaches, the spectral approach and the temporal approach. Here we can only use the temporal approach due to the kind of the type of the image that are stored on the local computer. So what is the principle of the wave celerity estimation? To extract the wave celerity, we just need to correlate time series of pixel intensity. So we consider a reference time series and we correlate this time series with its neighbors after applying a time lag. And the location of the maximum of correlation gives us the time integrated distance that can be used to compute the celerity using the time lag. This is the first estimate of the celerity. A second estimate of the celerity can be computed using the distance between two consecutive maximum of correlation. This distance represents the wavelength and can be used to compute a second estimate of the celerity. With these two estimates of the celerity, we can now compute the depth using the linear relation dispersion that can be solved using an iterative chain, such as the Newton-Raphson chain. We just have to define an initial value and a stop condition, depending on the precision we want. After extracting the depth, we need to know that there are some error sources for the depth estimation. We have a lot of work on this error in the literature. For example, benchmarks show that the water level fluctuation and the camera setting can affect the shoreline, can affect the wave celerity estimation. At Grand Popo, we compute that error, the horizontal error, between 0.2 and 1 meter. We can also have the camera movement, which can affect the accuracy of the depth estimate. But if we stay in the area of interest selected on our image, this error are reduced and are small. Tuan works on the different source of error related to the wave celerity. We have three main sources: the zip water limitation, the breakpoint intensity, and the wave non-linearity due to shallow water. All these three sources of error were incorporated in two estimators, the wavelength proxy and the tidal proxy, that can be used to filter the obtained bathymetry. The first error proxy, the wavelength, is simply computed as the difference between the two depth computed with the two estimates of the celerity. And the tidal proxy is computed by the difference between the sea level water derived from the video and the sea level from a tide gauge or a model. The sea level water derived from the video is just computed at the variation, at the fluctuation of the bathymetry around a reference bathymetry. So after deriving all the morphological parameters from the video, we can now, if you want to access the long-term time scale, we need more data because the video data, we have less than 4 years of video data, as the video has been installed in February 2013. So we need more data if we want to access the long-term scale. So we use satellite image, Landsat 4 to 8, to derive 5 shoreline for 5 different years: 1990, 2000, 2005, 2010, and 2015. With those data, we can access the shoreline variation at long-term scale. After, we also extract hydrodynamic data from the ERA interim database for the wave data. Sea level anomaly were extracted from altimetry products, the Salto-Jack and the CETEWASH extract products. And the tide data were extracted from the nearest tide gauge, the Cotonou tide gauge, and from the first 2014 model. With those morphological and hydrodynamic variable, we can now use a model to predict the shape of the coast. We have several models that can be used to compute both the cross-shore and the long-shore process at long-term time scale. But in our case, I choose to use the cascade model because first, it's well suited for the coast in this area, and this model has been applied in several other sites, like in USA, in Europe, in Africa, and in Asia. Now, with this data, I process all the data, and the first thing that I extract was the bathymetry. As you can observe on this video, you have the evolution of the bathymetry. For the period from June to August, we have the upper beach that is eroding and the terrace that is widening, while during the period from January to March, we have the upper beach which is accreting and the lower part of the terrace that is eroding. This bathymetry evolution was validated using the data collected during the Grand Popo experiment, and we obtained an average error of 0.15 meter. That corresponds approximately to 10% of the depth. This result has been presented during the Coastal Dynamic Conference in 2017. After extracting the beach profile evolution, I then use the error proxy to filter the bathymetry using a Kalman filter. So in this table, you can observe the result when using the two proxy. At least filtering the bathymetry with a Kalman filter using the tide proxy and the wavelength proxy reduce the error by 15% and increase the correlation by at least 15%. So for further process, we therefore filter our bathymetry using the tidal proxy, and this result were published in the special issue of Journal of Coastal Research for the International Coastal Symposium this year. After extracting the morphological parameter, I therefore extracted the hydrodynamic parameter from the video. Here you can observe that we extract the wave time series, the wave height, the wave period, and the wave direction from the video images. Here, of course, the video underestimate the data, but we have the same seasonality as the model data. I also extracted the sea level variation from the video. There I compare the video derived tide with the ADCP measurement and the model data. And you can observe that we have quite good correlation. But for the typical case of the Grand Popo experiment, during the first day, we can observe that we have some difference. Those differences are due to the atmospheric condition. But for the last day of the experiment, we have the correlation increased. We also derived the sea level anomaly from the video. Here you can observe that we have the same seasonality as the asymmetric products. This means that the video have good capability in deriving the sea level rise, because you can observe that you have also the same trend. But we need to know that this kind of estimation also induce some error, even if the proxy error can reduce them. We have the error due to the gaps in video data. We have the error due to the wave celerity estimation. We have the error due to wave breaking and wave nonlinearity. These results have been published in the Journal of Atmospheric and Oceanic Technology last year. Now, we have derived from the video the morphological and hydrodynamic parameter. Now, we need to study what is the impact of the natural forcing on the beach evolution. So first, I focus on the wave events to understand their impact on the beach. You can observe that we know that Grand Popo is a storm-free area. So we define our wave event as the 5% exceedance of wave height. With this definition, we identify 12 wave events with an average duration of 1.6 days. And this event cause a beach erosion, an average beach erosion of 3 meters, with a beach recovery duration of 15 days. When looking at the seasonal and at the interannual scale, we observe a strong correlation between the beach morphology and the wave seasonality. There is a strong correlation, but at interannual time scale, the erosive trend of the beach cannot be explained by the wave climate. Maybe this can be explained by the sea level variation. At least this result has been published in Water in 2017. So here, I therefore try to understand the impact of the sea level variation on the beach. First, I looked at intraseasonal scale, and for the first time, I noticed the beach adaptation to the Kelvin wave. When I speak about the intraseasonal variation of the sea level, this corresponds at 80% to Kelvin wave. For the start time, you observe that when the sea level is rising, the beach profile is, the upper part of the beach profile is eroding while the terrace is widening. This means that the beach adapts to the sea level rise by a deformation rather than a translation. At intraseasonal scale, there is a correlation between the trend, the erosive trend of the beach, and the sea level rise, but I don't have enough data actually to make any conclusion. So to access the interannual scale, I therefore use the shoreline derived from the Landsat images. And with an NEOF analysis, 2 main modes was obtained. One mode explained the sharp local change due to the presence of the deep harbor and the river mouth. As you can observe on the figure, this is the example of Cotonou Harbor, where we have an accumulation of sediment downrift and an erosion of the coast updrift. The second mode explains the large scale variability of the coast. This means the gradual decline, the gradual reduction of the accretion in the bight. And in 2000, a global erosion has begun to affect the coast in this area. These results have been published in Continental Shelf Results. After observing the impact of natural forcing and the impact of anthropogenic forcing, we therefore use a model to first reproduce the observed coastal change. So we use the cascade model. I used 10 years of data to calibrate the model and 5 years of data to validate the model. The first line of the different panel show what we observe in the field, and the second line of all the panel show what the model reproduce. So the first panel there correspond to Lomé airboard, the second one to Cotonou airboard, and the third one to Lagos airboard. The same here, Lomé, Cotonou, and Lagos. Overall, we note that we have the same evolution with the observation and the model output. We have a good overall performance. Now we know that, I know that I can use the model to reproduce the observed coastal change. So now I selected some scenario for using the model to see what's happened. So here, one scenario was the beach nourishment around several spots. Here you have the example of Lagos airborne, where in black you have the observation on the field. In red you have what the model show without nourishment, and in blue you have what we observe with nourishment. We remark that with 650,000 of meter cube of sediment per year, we can limit or we can stop the erosion. Another scenario was to improve our knowledge on the impact of the reduction of sediment input from the rivers. So here I define a new boundary condition based on two parameters. The first parameter induce the sediment influx, and the second parameter induce the spatial influence of the input. These results are still preliminary, and I need to work on perform results after. These results have been submitted to regional study in maritime science this year. So now, what are the main contributions of this thesis? As I stipulate in the introduction, my research question, the goal of this study is to understand what are the to identify the primary driver of shoreline change in the Bight of Benin and in the world. As you can see of this synopsis, we have the three groups of parameters that affect the coast. So in an integrated approach, we use different kinds of data to answer this question. The first thing I did is to derive all the different morphological and hydrodynamic parameters from the video. So for the first time, I derived the time series of wave characteristics from the video. I also derived the first bathymetry with integrated error proxy from the video, and I proposed a new methodology to derive the sea level from the video. To study the evolution of the beach at longer time scale, I also use data coming from satellite, Landsat for the morphology, and Topex and Jason 1, 2, 3 for the sea level anomaly. By combining all this data in a regional modeling, I was able to reproduce the observed coastal change by calibrating and validating the model, the cascade model, with some selected scenario. And after, I was able to describe the main process that affects the coast in the Bight of Benin. First, we have the influence of event and seasonal variability of the waves. Secondly, we have for the first time observed the beach adaptation to Kelvin wave. And finally, we have observed the main influence of coastal or human settlement, such as harbor and dams, on the long-term evolution of the coast. But these are some results, but I need to do more. So in future work, I will develop the regional network, the regional video network in West and Central Africa. We already have many video systems installed. As in this study, I just use one video system to achieve my goal. So now we have a lot of data that I can use to achieve this goal. Secondly, I propose here a new chain to derive the sea level water with video images. So now I apply this methodology to Grand Popo data, but this corresponds to a tropical environment. So we need to validate this chain on other kind of environment. For example, in duck, where we have 30 years of video data, and in Arabin, where we have 20 years of video data. With those data, we can also combine the estimation from this data with the altimetry products. Why not study the propagation of the sea level from open ocean to the coast by combining the altimetry and the video? This will be done in future work. I can also achieve my goal by combining the video data to the Sentinel data to access the global evolution of the coast in the world. So as you can observe on this figure, we have globally the same trend between the video and the Sentinel data, and this Sentinel data was processed for the Grand Popo town from the Grand Popo beach. We have the same trend, and this can be done for the whole beach around the world to access the beach variability. In this thesis, I'll also look at the possibility to use a deep learning approach to estimate the bathymetry. Here you can observe some results that were published in the special issue of Coastal Research for the International Coastal Symposium this year. With a set of 20,000 of simulations, we were able to apply deep learning and extract useful and accurate bathymetry. These results are still preliminary, and I need to work again on this methodology. In this thesis, I used the model to reproduce the coastal change and to predict the shoreline location for different scenarios. But I did not incorporate the sea level variation. So for further process, for future work, I need to incorporate all the different types of sea level variation at intra-seasonal scale, at seasonal scale, and at long-term scale with the sea level rise. So with this final objective for future work, I thank you very much for your attention for me to present you my result. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madame the President.
Thank you, Gregoire, and congratulations for this very nice and very clear presentation. So it's time now to move to the traditional question and answer session. And I propose to start by the reporters first. So Yann, do you have, I'm sure that you have plenty of questions. Can you start?
We left Yann, no?
Yann?
I don't see Yann. Maybe we can start with somebody else.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, he's there.
Okay.
Yes,
So I cannot turn on my camera because the maximum cameras is reached. So I have only the sound. Okay. So thank you, Mrs. President, and thanks to Gregoire for this very clear presentation. Thank you, Mrs. President, and thank you, Gregoire, for this presentation that was very clear and very well illustrated. So first of all, as one reviewer of the manuscript, I have to say that it's the first time I have seen so many international publications written during a PhD fellowship. So I congratulate your work, and it's very impressive to have more than 10 papers during a PhD scholarship. So congratulations for this very good production. I think this thesis was very interesting and very innovative. The work you have done during this PhD is of high level with innovative approaches with the video systems and satellite images, satellite data, and very scientific rigor to analyze the errors and limitations of your approaches. So I would like to highlight this very scientific approach. Then you have managed to develop both innovative methodologies using various captures, use modeling approaches, and at the same time, you have addressed large spatial and temporal scales coastal evolution, particularly useful for coastal managers in the Bight of Benin. So obviously, my role as a reviewer is to ask you some questions to enhance the discussion and to ask you to precise more your methodologies. So the first question I had is the definition of shoreline you are using. When you are working with satellite images, you use vegetation limits.
Exactly.
When you are working with video system, apparently you are using the mean sea level, but it was not very clear in the manuscript and in your presentation, so I don't know exactly what do you call shoreline with the video images. And then the last question is, obviously, if you have mean sea level shoreline and vegetation shorelines, how do you merge Sentinel and video shorelines? This was in your perspective work, but how can you merge both of the shoreline evolution?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. For the first question on the definition of the shoreline for the video images, in fact, we use the 15-minute waterline delineation. So it's not the mean sea level, but for each Timex image, which have a duration of 15 minutes, we detect the waterline limitation. We detect the waterline limitation. This is not the same thing with altimetry where it is the vegetation.
Okay, so, but when you have a long-term shoreline evolution, you cannot use this proxy because you have the tidal modulation of the shoreline. If you use 15 minutes shoreline, you have varying shoreline position. So when you have the long-term shoreline evolution, what do you call shoreline?
For the video, when we extract the shoreline, we have 15-minute shoreline location. And after, if you want to derive the long term, we can average the different shoreline daily and monthly and extract the shoreline. But in our case, we did not extract the long-term shoreline evolution using the video data. There were the longshore, the longshore evolution was mainly derived using the Landsat images. But with the video, if you want to compute the long-term shoreline evolution with the 3 years of data, we just compute the daily average and the monthly average, and we extract the trend, the interannual trend.
Okay.
Okay. For the second question, how to merge the video and the Sentinel data. In fact, that was preliminary. So I extract the Sentinel data for Grand Popo, and I try to mesh them manually with some. I just did it to see what I could have if I try to merge them, and I obtained this result, which was very interesting. So in future, I need to focus on this methodology to derive more accurate shoreline evolution.
Okay. Okay, so that's very, I would say, odd to have the same tendency for both shoreline and limit of vegetation, because when we see your coastal profile evolution, I don't know exactly where is the vegetation limit on this profile, but it's quite, yes, it's very promising work. Okay, a lot of challenges.
In the case of Sentinel, it is not the vegetation. So we have a lot of data. We have the video, we have the Landsat images, and we have Sentinel images. For Sentinel, it's not the vegetation. It's typically the same definition as the video, the waterline limitation.
Okay.
So
at
for
a given
Landsat,
tidal, yeah, okay, at a given tidal level. Okay. So yes, this matter of tidal level was, I think it's a point of concern, because you have defined a storm event as a high wave events. That is quite classical, and everybody is working with that proxy, but you don't take into account the tidal modulation. I mean, if you have nip tide or spring tide, you can have a quite important variation with given the morphology of your beach, with this upper beach and the low tide terrace. You can expect a strong modulation of wave action affecting either the upper beach only or the entire beach profile, with very different mechanisms, physical mechanisms. You can have longer swash regime, you can have longer surf regime, you can have overtopping, and depending on this tidal modulation. So it seems that in your data, wave I does not explain all the shoreline or volume evolutions. And so did you address this effect of tidal modulation, and what do you feel about it?
Yes, in fact, this question, you asked this question in your report, so I have the answer. I prepared a slide for that. So here you can observe that I compute the relative contribution of wave and tide for the video data, for the video shoreline evolution. Here you can see that at even scale, for the 15-minute time scale, the tidal has more effect on the beach evolution than waves. But when for longer time scale, this effect is reduced. So, for example, at monthly scale, the tidal effect is by 28%. So when in this thesis, I look for the longer time scale. So for me, the tidal effect was not so important than the intraseasonal waves, than the intraseasonal sea level effect. So there is an effect of the tidal modulation, but this effect is very low at long-term scale.
Okay. Okay, but anyway, the volume and the shoreline position you are using are affected by this tidal modulation. But I agree, on the long term, it's not so important. You still have the seasonal modulation of tides. So you have equinox tides. So you may have also a seasonal modulation of tide. Okay, but I agree that the wave seasonality is more important. On this topic, you mentioned that interseasonal water level anomaly can modulate the wave action on beach erosion. but these anomalies are only a few centimeters. So I was wondering, how can you exclude the tidal, the effect of tide on this wave action? Yes, I'm not sure. I think this very little intraseasonal water level anomaly, how can you exclude all other parameters to say that it affects the wave intensity?
Okay.
Did you have a look at other parameters to see how it works?
Yeah. In fact, this question revealed the difficulty to discriminate the effect of one parameter to the effect of to another parameter. In fact, to discriminate one parameter, we use the average event, like we detect for the typical case of the intraseasonal sea level events. We detect all the events and we average them to have an average impact on the beach. But if we take each event separately, we will see that the variation of the sea level water change depending on the condition of waves and tides. But if you want just to have the impact, the impact of the intraseasonal sea level, we need to measure all the events and to have an average impact of these events. So this result as I say, this result need to be tested and validated using a model, but this is the first time that we observe this kind of results when we average all the events. But the action of wave and tide are still there. We need just to discriminate them.
Okay. Okay, but yes, but that was quite impressive to see this very good correlation. But I was wondering, how can you exclude all other parameters? But okay. One of the more general points is that we have seen that the impact of storm events at your field site seems to be quite negligible because you have a very good recovery, very complete recovery. However, the shoreline is retreating. So I know you indicated that you have no explanation for this, but do you have an idea?
Maybe at Grand Popo, if we focus on Grand Popo, we need to know that Grand Popo was close to all the field of growings of Aneo first. So it's, I think, far from 20 kilometers. Maybe it is an effect of the human intervention with the presence of the Lomé harbor, the field of grown, and the diminution of the sediment providing by the Volta. So if we can explain this decline with the global overview of the shape, with the EUF analysis, we remarked that there were a gradual decline in accretion and an erosion that began in 2000. So maybe it's not the sea level rise, but the diminution of sediment that were provided by the Volta. Okay. We need with the modelization. Normally, with the modelization, I want to discriminate, to give an order of importance for each parameter. The gradual decline can be explained by X% of sea level rise and X% of human settlement, but this I will do that in future work.
Okay. Okay, so that brings me to the next question, is that at the large scale, the large temporal and spatial scale of the Bay of Benin, the modeling is very interesting and gives a very important insight on mechanisms and scenarios. One thing I found quite surprising is the fact that at the most important ports, or the more important anthropogenic structures, you have a strong downdrift erosion, but you have almost no sand trapping on the updrift coasts. So how do you explain this? If you say that everything could be trapping of sand by the grounds or by the structures, how do you explain that you don't have accumulation on the uplift cost? Do you have an idea? I know it was not the topic of your thesis, but
yes, you are right. I didn't really focus on the action of error. I look at the global scale, but at each local scales, maybe there is the intervention of man, like in Lagos. Maybe I will have a look on future work, I think.
yeah, because it's a very important point, because if you want to have coastal management that includes beach nourishment or things like that, you have to know where you can find sun and where the sun is going. So I was wondering why there's no accumulation on the uplift side of the ports. That's okay. Okay, so I have only a last question because I don't want to speak too much. So your methodology to estimate water level with the video system is based on the assumption that nothing is moving offshore the closed depth.
Yes.
So first of all, how confident are you with this closed depth engineering concept? And the second point is, given the maximum bathymetry estimates that can be obtained with the video, the maximum distance from the video station, can you indicate the typical cost where this technique is expected to perform the best? You talk about testing the video system in duck, but I'm not sure the wave climate is the same. And so I was wondering, given the limitation of the approach with the closed depth concept and with the distances and the maximum depth you can reach, yes, can you precise the typical cost where you believe this technique can be very useful and efficient?
Okay, I start with the last question. As we said in the thesis manuscript, I didn't explain it here. Due to the error, due to rapid change, maybe with wave condition or tide condition, these techniques can have good results on rocky beach, for example, where the bottom doesn't move. For this type of coach, we will have very good results. And this works very well in Grand Popo because we don't really have storm events in Grand Popo. We have wave events, but not really storm events. But in storm event area, this may not work. So we need to test to see what are the main error, what doesn't work, what are the limitations. So for a first step in Grand Popo, we have good results, maybe because it is not a storm area, but we have to test it in an other area. For the maximum distance, for the maximum depth, for this case, we extract the bathymetry for depth less than 4 or 5 meters, because after 5 meters, the estimation is not very accurate. For the bathymetry evolution, we selected depth less than 4 or 5 meters. Maybe because
so that means that you need to have closed depth that are less than 4 or 5 meters if you want to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. And how I'm confident with the methodology, I'm very confident. So I need to test the method to other place, to other environment, to access the limitation. And maybe if we can enhance the methodology or improve the methodology.
Okay. Thank you, Gregoire. It was a very good work and very interesting to read. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Yann. We will give the floor to the second reviewer, Kwasi.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you very much for the Very interesting presentation. I must say I enjoyed reading your thesis. Very relevant work, and I find it as
Yes.
as my colleague said, it was very interesting thesis to read. And again, it's very interesting. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm commending you for the good work done. And again, it's very relevant because a lot of activities are going on within the sub-region, the Bight of Benin, which, you know, really makes your work very important. And it answers a lot of questions that I think moving forward, we have to look at in terms of coastal dynamics within the Bight of Benin. Unfortunately, I don't hear you talk about sand winning, which is also a major problem and has been highlighted by some authors, which influence sediment dynamics within the system. I don't hear anything about that, and I think it's a critical thing that one needs to look at. Now, how do you see the impact of subsidence in the Bight of Benin?
Hey, can I answer?
Yes, you can answer, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question. Yeah.
Okay. For the sand mining, I did not speak about the sand mining in the presentation, but the sand mining is a real problem in the Bight of Benin. This is a problem that we need to solve with the authorities and the coastal policy. What about the subsidence? We need to carry out several studies on the subsidence, and we need to give to the coastal policy the tools to understand how to act. How can I say that? How to develop some strategy because the main person who are affected are the people. So we need to develop some strategy to understand how to save people and properties. I don't know if I answer your question or if you want to know another thing.
Well, not fully, but let's make progress. Not fully though, but let's make progress. The first examiner talked about your definition of shoreline, because it appears we have two definitions of shoreline in the study. Now, how did you calculate the rate of change, and how did you reduce error as much as possible based on these two definitions of your shoreline?
For the video, the shoreline change were computed using the shoreline location. So did I compute the shoreline change? To compute the shoreline change with the video, we just have to remove the interannual scales of the. Let me show you with the figure, please. Okay, here, for example, here we compute the interannual strength for the sea level for the shoreline location. To compute this, we just remove the seasonal fluctuation from the shoreline location and compute annual location, and therefore remove the long-term trend. But for the Landsat images, we just compute the change regarding the initial shoreline which was in 1990. So from the initial shoreline, we compute the change. And we also compute the error associated with all this change, which was based for Landsat on the resolution of the images. The resolution is around 30 meters. So we use the resolution and we compute the bit change. I don't know if I answered question or if I don't understand the question.
You've answered the question. You've answered the question. But my worry is comparing a high resolution shoreline extracted with a coarse resolution shoreline. That is where I had a bit of a challenge.
Okay.
And again, you want to say something?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you know, the fact is that in our approach, it was an integrated approach where you use different kind of data. So we need to compare off-field data to have useful information for our cost. So for the local evolution, which were monitored with the video, we mainly observe the impact of waves and sea level. But for the long-term evolution that were derived from the Landsat images, we mainly looked for the impact of coastal infrastructure. So they were not really measured, but they were used to assess the impact of different factors separately.
Okay. Now, again, you also mentioned that the movement, camera movement as a source of error was assumed to be small in ground popo. How did you make that assumption?
In fact, okay, on this slide, I show you the transformation between pixel to real coordinate. So when you look on the red area, this red area corresponds to our area of interest. As you can see in this area, the pixel footprint increase when we are going from the beach to offshore, and the error related to camera movement may be high where the pixel footprint is high. But when we have the pixel footprints lower than 1 meter, we assume that the error may be minimal, in fact. So this is why we stay in the area of interest. And when we stay in the area of interest, the error that may be induced is small, in fact.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is good. Now, let me pick your brain on something. You know, there's a proposed port construction in Kita, which is going to be done very, very soon. I'm meeting the authorities in some few weeks to have a discussion on it. What do you think will be the impact of that new port in the dynamics within the Bight of Benin? And as a scientist, what will be your advice?
Airborne are useful for the economy of our country, as we are low income country. So airborne are useful. So it is not useful for us to not construct airballs. But when the airballs are constructed, we need these airballs will affect the evolution of the shoreline in the area with, why not, a continuously erosion, an increased erosion of the different area downrift the new airball. But if I have to say something to the authority, I want to say them that you have constructed the airball, but you need also to stabilize the coast. You need to apply all the measures that are useful to limit the erosion downrift the airball. That is one of the solutions I provide in this thesis by implementing the beach nourishment, for example, as one of the solutions that we can use. But there are other type of solutions. Why not the bypassing? We need to implement those kind of of solution. So one thing is to understand the dynamic in the region. The second thing is to propose as a scientific some solution for our authorities. One of the solutions is the sand mining, not the sand mining, is the beach nourishment. So providing sediment where the beach is eroding. Because as a scientific, the groins is not really a solution. The groins are not really a solution. They move the problem, the erosion problem downrift. So we need proper solution like beach nourishment or bypassing or other.
Yes, I recognize that as one of your recommendations, which I find very, very exciting. But you also said that a developing country, we need to build harbors, but we need to take care of the downdrift impact of the harbor on the shoreline systems. Do you think nourishment in your recommendation is sustainable in a developing country?
Why not? Why not? We just need to find where we can take the sand. It is one solution, but in our typical case, we need to define new solution adapt to our country. So that's why we are doing science. We need to find the best solution suited for our country. Maybe now I know that the model is working very well as we reproduce all the coastal beach change that we observe on the field. So now we can plan or we can test different kind of solution and choose the best one which is suited for our country and which is low cost, for example. In this thesis, I use and many use the video data because the video is a cheaper tool, and this kind of system is well suited for our country because we don't have to give many money to have a lot of information. So it is in this way that we have, I don't have a solution now to resolve all the problem, but we need to work and take the cheapest solution and plan them and see what can happen when we apply them.
Have you heard about a hybrid approach?
Yes. It is another solution, but with the hybrid approach, as I say previously, this may be an important plan for a future work. Why not implementing an hybrid approach using a regional modeling? Why not?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And let me congratulate you again. I enjoyed reading your thesis. It was so nice. And I look forward to reading more papers from you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. Yeah.
Thank you, Kwasi. I propose to move now to the questions from the examiners, starting with Olusegun.
Yes.
If you have any question.
Somebody can turn off the camera.
Okay. Let me start acknowledging the.
Maybe you can go there. Wait. There's an echo.
Oh, come here.
Yeah.
You can come here.
Because of the echo.
Okay. Let me start by acknowledging the. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Let me start by acknowledging the president and also the members of jury. Yes, Mr. Abesolo, that was a wonderful presentation, and actually I appreciate your work moving from the local to the global. It was really a very nice work. And a lot have been said by my colleagues. So I'm just going to go straight to the questions that I have for you. Let me start from the study area, looking at your thesis. When you're looking at the harbors, you made mention about the harbors that we have in the Bight of Guinea, the harbor we have in Cotonou, the one we have in Lagos. And then when I looked at the one we have in Lagos, I looked at the year in which this particular harbor was actually constructed. And I discovered that there's a kind of misleading information in that. So you may have to look at that, because the major problem we have at the Lagos harbor is actually the two moles that were built between 1905 and 1912, not actually in 1957, as you rightly mentioned. So please, you may need to take note of this, because I know that your work is going to public, and so that it does not mislead people. Then let me go to the methodology. In your study, I'm going to focus on the regional, at the regional scale. You made use of satellite imagery. And then when I look at the year that you looked at, you look at from 19, if I'm right, from 1990 down to 2015. Yes, I looked at those particular year. If you may recall that in 2003, the Landsat 7, because when you mention when you make use of 2005 and 2010, those are Landsat 7. So how did you able to get over the issue of the scan line that we have on this imagery? Because I look at your thesis, you did not actually talk about this. So that is question one. Then the other question has to do with the seasonal change of the beach and also the wave climate. You mentioned that from January to August, that you call it, there are two phases. We have the accretive phase, and then we have the erosion phase. According to what you said that the erosion phase or the eroding phase starts from January to August.
No, from June to August.
From actually it's from the thesis. Actually from the thesis, probably you may have to look at that. Yes, you have in your thesis from
okay.
January.
Okay. Yes.
Checking.
Yeah.
It's okay, like this.
Yes.
So from January to August, and then that actually caught my attention. And then you said from the accretive phase is from September to December. So I would like explanation on that. Then let me move that to the results. Looking at the shoreline changes, looking at the section 5, though it wasn't part of your presentation, but it was in the report. You look at the section 5, that is after the Lagos, you have the section 5 towards the Niger Delta. At this particular section of the coast, of the Bight of Guinea coast, you discover that looking at the evolution from 1990 up to 2015, there were a kind of constant erosion at that particular sector. So what do you think could have been responsible for that erosion? Because actually the erosion actually has been there before the construction of the Lagos Atlantic City, which was in Lagos. That was in section 4. Then secondly, you made use of cascade model. And looking at the model that you used, I looked at it looking at, okay, if without the harbor and also with the harbor, you discover that at that particular section of the Bight of Guinea is like the model did not actually capture the water, because it was almost the same with the harbor and when without harbor. So what do you think could have been responsible for that particular? Because it's just like there's a perpetual erosion at that section of the Bight of Guinea. So I think those. I think with that, I will just stop for now.
Okay. Okay. I will start to answer. I need
Okay.
to.
Okay. So
We just put.
could you open here?
Yeah, maybe
Just
short
up
answer.
to, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the. What am I? Okay. For the first question, this was a recommendation for the year of the construction of the airport. I will change it. I will look for that for more precision. For the second question was based on the Landsat image that were used between Landsat 6 and 7 for the shoreline between 2000 and 2005, I think. Is that
2005 and 2010, those are Landsat 7. Then they have this scan line that you have on the images.
okay? In fact, as in this thesis, I really focus on determining what are the main drivers. I did not process the Landsat data. So the Landsat data was processed by another team. Edouard Anthony is there. He can answer to give some explanation to this question. But for me, I receive the shoreline and I try only to work with those shoreline. For the local change on the beach evolution profile, in fact, there is a seasonal variation of the beach profile. So for the rainy season, between June, July, and August, the upper part of the beach is eroding, while the terrace is widening. And during the dry season, from December, January to March, so the upper batch is accreting and the terrace is eroding. The terrace white is reducing. So it's like a seasonal variation, a seasonal pattern of the beach profile that is correlated with the wave energy, with the wave intensity. For the question of the erosion, the constant erosion, which as you suppose was existing before the construction of the airport, they are multiple. They can be due to the river mud, for example. They can be due to the sand milling. They can be due to the sea level rise. Maybe with our model, with the model that we built, you know, first we just look at the regional scale, the impact at the regional scale. So for further work, we can use at the specific location to understand what are the main driver of shoreline change at local scale. As I show you, we define a new boundary condition, for example, to implement that kind of change. Is it due to the fact that, for example, if I take the place that we call Bush du Roi, where sometimes the mouth close completely, you know, if it is closed, sediment cannot go out. So we need to study. The Bight is 400 kilometers long. So for the first step, we just look at the global scale. We focus on Grand Popo variation, but now we need to make more work on different local, different other local seats. Okay. For the last question, you asked for one scenario was made with and without the airborne. Okay. And you see that globally, without the airborne, we have the same shift. I understand the question.
Yes, if you look at that, then that was the last part of your, the last parts of the model. That is section 5.
Yes.
That is S5. We discovered that there was not actually difference using the model between with able and then without able. So
maybe we have several reasons. First, at this specific place, we have the littoral drift. We have a convergence of sea measurement from the littoral drift. So at the nature's peak, we have the littoral drift, which is going from the east to the west, and on the other part, the littoral drift is going from the. I can show you on the slide. So in this specific place, yeah,
I think that's where you actually where there is convergence within that particular region.
Exactly.
Yes.
It is this particular region. Yeah. Maybe it is because we have a convergence of the littoral drift. Maybe it is because we have some sediment that are provided from the Niger River. Maybe it is because of we have several reasons. There can be several reasons. But overall, here you remark that there is some kind of stabilization, or I don't know. The erosive strength is really observed on the other part. In fact, in the model, we really limit somewhere here where we assume that we don't have change in this area. But with the new condition, with the new boundary condition, we can define, for example, we can change the condition at the boundary and see how can the model improve the observation. There are a little thing to do with this model, so this was just preliminary to see if we can reproduce the global trend and the global change, mainly around the river mouth and the it's very maybe the model can help us. First, it was just to see what's happened around the main airball. For example, we didn't look at the shorter, at the local scale for the groins, for example. It was just to look for the global shape. Secondly, for the main impact of the coastal airball and the river mouth, and we can go further. As I say in the future work, we need to work again on the model to introduce all the different factors that can affect the coast.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate your work. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's okay. So I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. I propose to give the floor to Edouard.
There is no song, Edouard. We don't understand you. We don't hear you. Edouard, you have to activate your.
Is it okay now?
Mute. Yes.
Is it okay now?
Okay, it's okay now. We hear.
Yes. Thank you very much, Florence. And my thanks also to Raphael. It's a pleasure. It's always been a pleasure working with Raphael. And of course to Magnus and to Bruno as well for the invitation to participate in this thesis. It's a pleasure for me. It's an honor as well. I would have been a reporter on the thesis, but I couldn't because I've published with Gregoire. So that was stipulated that I couldn't be a reporter on the thesis, but it doesn't, never mind. I think I'll just move on to 3 brief comments, and then I'll go on to the thesis itself. The first one concerns the point raised by Yann Balouin on the limited, very limited accretion updrift of the harbor structures and the massive erosion downdrift, where you should realize that as time goes on, of course, the accretion is spread along shore over a much longer area. So erosion, you cannot actually compare erosion rates to accretion rates because you've got a much longer shoreline where the sediment coming down is trapped by the mold. So that gives you a limited amount of accretion. And of course, as time goes on, the sediments accumulating updrift of the harbor mold, of course, are going more and more on the shore face. So these are not really visible in the accretion system compared to the downdrift side. Regarding the scale, resolution difference between 2005 and 2010 images, this was, of course, done by one of the co-authors, Manon Bessé. And if my recollections are correct, she actually used an error margin that's different for the two types of images, and then smoothed this using DSAS afterwards. So it balanced out quite well. The third point concerns the long ongoing erosion on the western flank of the Niger Delta. We should realize that deltas are very complex entities, and the Niger Delta is a multi-mouth system. So you can have sediment being apportioned among these mouths in a different way. And you can have long-term erosion along a shoreline that's, of course, linked to one of these mouths. This could be the problem on the chronically eroding area mentioned by Olusegun. Okay, so as I said earlier, it's a pleasure for me to participate in this thesis. I think it's very, very important having a thesis of this quality. And I'd like to, of course, congratulate the thesis supervisors, because this is really capacity building at its best. I think it's very important to stress the fact that we are building capacity in the region. This is being done by Raphael. This is being done by Kwesi. I think it's important to state this. And I hope, of course, that Gregoire and Olusegun will contribute to this capacity building for the West African region. I think this is really very important. It's a fine reflection also of the kind of work IRD has been doing in the West African region. So I'd like to insist on this. I really enjoyed reading the thesis, and I've enjoyed interacting with Gregoire, of course. Your presentation was very, very good. I know you're French speaking, but it was really very, very nice. I really enjoyed the presentation. So the thesis is very important in terms of methodology. I think this, if I have to judge a thesis in terms of the training that's dispensed within the framework of a PhD thesis, I would always insist on methodology. Methodology is very, very important because it's the backbone of training, of course. And there's also a degree of autonomy that should come in the way you analyze your data, the way you decide on what goes on, how you interpret your data. I think these are two important points, but the methodology here is really very, very good. And of course, we can see that Raphael and Magnus and Bruno have intervened in having a methodology that deals not only with remote sensing, but also modeling and experimental work. This is a very, very nice combination, I think, and very, very interesting. I've got a question for you, Gregoire. What do you mean by storm waves when you talk about this West African sub-region? Because you mentioned there's a whole chapter where you talk about storm waves, and that these waves may be responsible for eroding the beach.
Okay, in fact, like I precise in my presentation,
yes,
we didn't really have storms in Grand Popo. It is like it is wave events. The best term is wave event. It's not really storm, it is wave events. But as we need to assess the impact of this wave event, we use a definition of storm events, like the 5% accident of wave height. But in fact, it is not storm, it is some kind of wave events that affects the coast.
Yes, but I think this should be extirpated from your thesis. You should talk about high wave energy events rather than storm events, because we know what storm waves are. Storm waves are generally waves that are within the area of propagation of the wind still, and these are not really typical of the region. We could have line squalls moving from the east to the west, but these are not really, they don't really generate storm waves. And the trade wind waves you've got are not associated with storms. And of course, the higher energy waves you've got are really swell waves moving. But what's interesting here could be actually building up something on the relationship between these fluctuations along the coast and pulsations in the high pressure systems you've got in the Southern Atlantic. So that's really very interesting, because you can actually see that in the lapse of a few days, you've got these fluctuations going on. So I think it's important that you rectify this point in your thesis and not talk about storm waves. Actually mention that this is not a storm wave environment. It's a swell wave environment, subsidiarily with trade wind waves. One thing that seemed to have been missing in your triptych on the sea level, waves and human influence is sediment supply. Why doesn't sediment supply figure as one of the main drivers? It is a driver, because if you talk about real forcing drivers, it's not just waves, huh? Because sea level just leads to a fluctuation of your water level. So what about sediment supply? I think this is really very, very important. It's fundamental along beaches, along the West African coast, where you've got this open drift system.
Yes, in fact, when I say human impact, I mean the impact of human on the coast and on the river discharge with harbor and dams on the river. So I need a term that summarizes the action of human on the coast and on the river discharge. Maybe you are right. I need to say human impact plus river discharge. I don't know.
Well, I don't think you should use the term river discharge, because once the sediment moves along the coast, it's no longer related to river discharge. I mean, it's moved along by longshore drift. I think sediment supply itself, in its own right, should figure in this in your conceptual diagram. I think it's very, very important. Okay, and talking about river supply of sediment, one thing I didn't see mentioned in the thesis, you did mention somewhere in your slide, but not in the thesis itself, that the shore face is not well known. And we know for sure that there must have been a fair amount of sediment supply from the shore face in the Bight of Benin. This is a swell wave energy environment, and there's a clear possibility, we believe, that sediment could be moving as well from the shore face, from the lower shore face, in fact, onto the upper shore face and to the beaches. But this wasn't something you mentioned. I know we haven't worked on this, because we did mention this possibility in our 2019 paper in Continental Shelf Research. But have you got any ideas on how we can go about working on this aspect?
In fact, actually, we have many data that we can do, that we can use. I don't know if at Crampopo with the video system we can access this kind of information. I don't really know. I don't think. Maybe with the Sentinel data we can try to access this kind of data. Maybe with Sentinel it may be possible.
Yes, because this is a developing area in terms of reconstructing bathymetry from UAV and Sentinel data as well. I think there's a possibility there. But of course, you've also got the bathymetric surveys, but they're more expensive, of course. But I think this should be kept in mind. I think we shouldn't exclude shore face sediment supply. I think this is a very, very interesting area for demonstrating this possibility, of course. And clearly on the big spit you've got, for instance, along the just after the mouth, St. Paul's spit on the Volta Delta, you've got sediment supply moving along the spit and actually going onto the shore face as well. So this is really something interesting. Now, I've always been interested in something. I mentioned this, I discussed this with Raphael some time ago. What could have been the influence of water table fluctuations on the sand barrier near the beach? Seasonal water table fluctuations.
Please, can you ask again your question?
Yes. We actually know that you can have seasonal water table fluctuations on the beach, okay, related to rainfall that can actually affect the sediment dynamics. I mean, this could be an influence, for instance, in what Jan was saying with the tidal fluctuations. You've also got maybe the water table fluctuations and the water table is sourced by rainfall. Yeah, rainfall is not too high in this area, I agree with you. But as you go towards the east, you get more rainfall, especially after Lagos. So is there a possibility in the future that you can also look at the influence of rainfall, seasonal rainfall fluctuations and the water table along the beach on the stability of the beach in terms of high tide erosion, for instance, or high tide accretion? That's something that needs to be explored at the same time as you've been looking at sea level fluctuations. I think it could be an important parameter. What do you think of that?
Yes, of course, you are right, because in fact, tropical areas have been understudied. So there are many factors that we need to understand, like the sea level variation with the tidal level variation. So there are many information we don't have actually, and we need more study to apprehend those processes. So I think you are right. We need to access those variables, understand how they affect the evolution of the coast.
Yes, because when you look at the even in the Bight of Benin, in Benin, for instance, I remember when you look at the water table, I mean, people can actually go and get fresh water on the barrier in Bouches du Roi. I remember very well. You know, they would dig wells on the barrier itself, so there's water table. It's perched there, and it accumulates water in the rainy season, and water level goes down, of course, in the dry season, and this can have an effect on the dewatering of the beach water table, and of course on grain transport, whether the upper beach is saturated or not. So this could be something that it's not very expensive looking at, but it's worth having a look at in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let me say congratulations once more for the quality of the work done. There's still a lot of work to be done, and as I said, I'm very happy with this capacity building, of course, and I hope this will go on, of course, and that will strengthen the potential of West African researchers on coastal dynamics. I think this is really very it's a momentous situation. We had the thesis a few years ago with Julius Agnuring. I think this is important, so we need to build up on this. And well done to you and to your supervisors as well. Thank you very much, Florence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edouard. So I propose to now leave the floor to Professor Tomedi, if you have any question.
Only those with a PhD can ask questions, mind you.
I don't know if
that's the rule.
What does it mean?
The rule is only those having had a PhD can ask questions to the. You should specify.
And the Professor Tomedi has no PhD?
No, only those with a PhD can ask a question.
She's professor.
Alors, vous m'écoutez bien?
Yes. On vous entend, professeur.
Ok, je vais seulement m'exprimer en français. J'ai un mauvais anglais, donc je tiens déjà à féliciter le candidat pour sa présentation brillante et surtout le travail qui a été fait nous permet de voir si dans notre pays nous pouvons avoir des résolutions fortes. Déjà, je tiens à remercier vos directeurs, à savoir Raphaël Alma, Larson Magnus, vous m'excusez pour la prononciation, mais qui ont bien voulu diriger cette thèse. Et puis, M. Ian Baldwin, Kwasi Abening Ado, qui ont bien voulu rapporter cette thèse. Et Mme Birol Florence, qui a accepté d'examiner et surtout présider cette thèse. Sans oublier M. Dada Olusengu, M. Edouard Anthony et Bruno Castel, qui ont bien voulu être examinateurs de cette thèse. Parce que cette thèse nous est une thèse importante et c'est une innovation pour notre jeune établissement qui a bien voulu s'associer à votre institution pour pouvoir avoir un travail très performant. déjà vraiment, je vous remercie. Surtout en lisant les travaux qui ont été menés par M. Abbé Solo, nous nous rendons compte que c'est une étude très innovante. Surtout que cette étude a permis de mettre en exergue des principaux facteurs contribuant à la variabilité du trait de côte dans la baie du Bénin, au golfe de Guinée. Mais ces principaux facteurs aussi ont permis de prédire à long terme la position du trait de côte et la morphologie des plages. Ce que je tiens à demander, c'est que à quoi nous sert cette étude au Cameroun? Parce que cette étude a été menée au Bénin et nous au Cameroun, est-ce que nous allons profiter des résultats de cette étude? Il est vrai, nous sommes dans le golfe de Guinée, mais concrètement, vous pensez que cette étude nous est très importante au Cameroun? C'est la première question. Et la deuxième question, je voudrais savoir si, à partir de cette étude, nous pouvons proposer des décisions à notre gouvernement pour les ports qui sont déjà installés. Voir si, à partir de cette étude, on peut essayer d'avoir des contributions pour mieux conserver les infrastructures qui existent déjà. Je ne sais pas si je me suis fait comprendre.
Oui, j'ai bien compris. Je vais essayer de répondre. First, I need to precise that this thesis was carried out in the laboratory of Fishery and Resources of the Institute of the at the University of Douala, and Professor Tomedi is the director of that institute in Cameroon. So when I was in Cameroon, I was doing my I was having my stay in her institution. So she was not part of the supervision team, but she was part on the administrative stuff to begin to have the funding of this thesis. So first, I thank her for all the help and his presence. It was very useful. So now I will answer in French for the question. Pour l'utilité de l'étude au Cameroun, il faut dire qu'en fait, cette thèse a été menée principalement dans la baie du Bénin. C'est près de 400 km de côte. Et la baie qui est la plus proche, c'est la baie du Biafra, qui est dans la baie dans laquelle se trouve le Cameroun. Et bien que les environnements soient quelque peu différents, c'est deux environnements qui ont principalement les mêmes caractéristiques hydrodynamiques en termes de sea level, de variation du niveau de la mer, et en termes de forçage hydrodynamique. Donc, ce qui a été appliqué dans la baie du Bénin peut facilement être applicable dans la baie du Biafra, notamment sur les côtes du Cameroun. Il faut bien préciser que, à côté de tout ce travail qui a été fait dans cette thèse, il y a une autre étude que nous avons d'ailleurs menée, toujours dans le cadre de cette thèse, que je n'ai peut-être pas présentée ni dans la thèse, ni dans cette présentation. Il y a une autre étude qui a été faite pour comprendre principalement les causes de l'érosion, par exemple, dans l'estuaire du Vouri, et quel était principalement l'impact, par exemple, du port de Kribi. Donc, avec ce que nous avons fait dans la baie du Bénin, nous pourrons, par exemple, aller plus loin et offrir des solutions pérennes au gouvernement camerounais, notamment en termes de gestion des infrastructures côtières, en termes d'aménagement. Il faut dire que sur la côte camerounaise, on a plein de villages de pêcheurs qui ont été érodés au fil des années. Et à Kribi, par exemple, c'est l'une des régions où on a pratiquement un recul qui atteint certaines fois 20 mètres par an. Alors, cette thèse nous offre la possibilité, premièrement, déjà de reconstruire les changements qu'on observe, mais deuxièmement aussi de pouvoir apporter des solutions comme peut-être identifier quels sont les endroits qui sont les plus vulnérables, identifier même avec des vidéosystèmes, mettre en place des systèmes d'alerte précoce d'éventuelles catastrophes. Cela, c'est complètement possible avec les systèmes vidéo, et d'aller plus loin, peut-être dire même aux autorités où on peut construire des ports ou pas. C'est c'est autant de possibilités qui s'ouvrent à nous, autant de travaux que nous pourrons mener avec de futurs travaux. Notamment actuellement, il y a Arnaud Kwekam qui travaille avec nous sur cette question, sur de nouveaux modèles qu'on peut appliquer notamment sur la côte camerounaise. Cette étude est d'un grand intérêt, non pas seulement pour le Cameroun, mais surtout pour tous les pays riverains de la zone, allant pratiquement de la Côte d'Ivoire jusqu'au Gabon et peut-être plus bas, car on a tous les mêmes problèmes. Un problème d'érosion qui se pose sur les côtes ghanéennes. Si le Ghana répond avec des structures de côtières, ce problème va se déplacer progressivement jusqu'au Cameroun. Donc, c'est vraiment une approche beaucoup plus intégrée qu'on doit avoir et qui nous permet de répondre à un certain nombre de questions scientifiques et des questions aussi de gestion administrative et côtière.
Oui, donc, mais si j'ai bien compris et j'ai lu votre document, je crois que c'est une étude pionnière. Donc, actuellement, oui, nous ne pouvons pas encore prendre une décision concrète. Il y aura d'autres études complémentaires afin de nous permettre de dire avec aisance que, bon, concrètement, voilà ce qu'il faut faire, voilà ce qu'il ne faut pas faire. Parce que nous sommes de l'administration. On attend les solutions techniques pour proposer au gouvernement pour mieux gérer nos ports. Donc, vraiment, je tiens à vous encourager à aller dans ce sens et que les étudiants que vous aurez à encadrer les jours à venir doivent travailler dans les perspectives d'améliorer les travaux que vous avez commencés. Parce que d'habitude, je constate que les gens laissent ce qu'ils ont commencé, ils vont faire autre chose. Donc, vraiment, Madame la Présidente, merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir accepté de présider ce jury très important. Et merci à nos collaborateurs, surtout nos partenaires qui ont bien voulu que ce travail soit mené. C'est un premier travail pour le département d'océanographie qui appartient à notre jeune établissement. C'est un travail qui va beaucoup nous aider. Je vous encourage et vraiment merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Madame Biro, je peux peut-être can add something.
Yes,
Professor Tomé is the director of the aquatic and fishery science of the University of Douala in Cameroon, and this establishment, this faculty have five departments: aquaculture, one department of oceanography. And after Raphael Ongene, I think that I am the second really oceanographer of the Cameroon. So Professor Tomedi, his science is based on fishery, aquaculture. So on oceanography, she's just like a model telling us that go ahead and work again. So I want to precise that.
Merci.
Laurence, may I just add that I sincerely apologize because I didn't understand. I thought you were asking the audience to intervene, to ask questions.
Ah, no, of course.
I'm really very, very sorry for what I said. It wasn't. Because
pas grave.
Okay,
Merci
so
Merci.
I propose that now we move to the questions from the three supervisors. And then I will finish by my own question, which will be very, very short, I promise. So Magnus, maybe you could start.
So now I'm unmuted. Okay, yeah, I don't think I have many questions, but I just start by complimenting you on a very, very nice presentation and a very good piece of work. And sorry, my phone is ringing. I'm hanging up. And it was very impressive because in terms of methodology that Anton touched upon, you covered a very broad range of approaches, all the way from data collection, data analysis, data modeling, to various empirical relationship and then ending up with numerical modeling. And at the same time also you studied a number of processes from varying in scales in time and space. So it's a very comprehensive and an interesting piece of work and pioneering in many aspects. So, but I guess I should ask one question maybe and touch upon the modeling. When we worked on the modeling aspects, it's one critical aspect is data, and that sort of maybe limits some of our ideas in the beginning, where we try to maybe do a bit more on the cross-shore aspects. But how do you see, what kind of data would you like to be able to collect or compile to proceed with the modeling sort of to the next stage? Often there is a very fruitful interaction between modeling and data, where they sort of strengthen each other. The modeling gives you ideas of what kind of data to collect and compile. But how do you see, what kind of data would you need to take the modeling to maybe the next level and include some aspects already touched upon, like sea level variations and so on?
Okay, thank you for the question. To answer the question, I can show you this slide. This is one of the possible solution for your question. For example, here we have extracted 5 years of data from Sentinel since 2015 to now. So with Sentinel, we can extract everywhere in the world 5 years of data at with one data every week, every 5-6 days. This is one solution. But if you want to access the long-term time scale, I developed shortly another code to extract the Landsat images and at high frequency scale. So we can have one data every month from the Landsat images. And this will help us to have a better resolution of the model and to enhance the capacity of the model. So with this new approach, this new code that I wrote, we can extract from Google Earth Engine. We can extract many useful data for the regional modelization.
Okay. You know, because now the modeling is focusing to a large extent on longshore transport effects of gradients, and that is often mainly driving the large-scale changes. But in order to include other types of variation, whatever is related to water level fluctuations, you may have to resolve some of the aspects of the profile, and it may be important to be able to detect, do we have dunes, what is the barriers or whatever. To what extent could you do that kind of mapping with satellite images?
Yes, of course. Maybe for example, for when we use Sentinel data, we can extract the bathymetry. That is the one of the main results of Raphael and Erwin research team. So with the Sentinel data, we can extract the bathymetry and enhance the capacity of the model. For example, in the bat, we don't really have dunes, so maybe it could be difficult for the dunes, but with the intertidal profile and the high resolution images from Sentinel, which we could have both the upper part of the beach and the bathymetry, and at high frequency every 5-6 days, for example.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't think again, congratulations on a nice piece of work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bruno, do you have any question? or comment?
Thank you, Florence. Well, I will be very brief, and actually, I do not have any question for Gregoire. I would just like to congratulate him for all the work done and for the presentation. I mean, it was very clear. You've done an impressive amount of work. This is reflected with all the publications and talks in conferences. And according to this and the way you responded to the questions, clearly we can say that you have a skill, expertise, and background to develop innovative and self-funded research in the future, whether it is in Europe, Africa, or elsewhere. So really, congratulations. So yes, I was in the co-supervising team, but well, it was a supervision at a quite small amount. I was by far not the day-to-day supervisor, but well, we talked a lot and we met in conferences and workshop, and you went to come working in Bordeaux during a few months. And what I can say is that you are very motivated and hardworking, and it was really a pleasure to work with you. You have a lot of ideas, and I mean, it was well, it was a great pleasure for me to be able to work with you, although it has not been during a lot of time during this PhD. An important thing is that I know that I think you have a kid and family in Cameroon, and you spent a lot of time in France. I cannot imagine how tough it must have been. But what I can say is that it's also emphasizes your strong motivation and your passion for what you're doing, and well, motivation and passion are two very important personality traits of a researcher. So well, definitely you have the skill to continue in research. So that's about all I wanted to say. I just want to congratulate you again for all the work done. I would like to thank you for having worked with me, and I wish you all the best for the future. I do not know what you will do in the next years, but I do hope that we will be able to work again together. So thank you.
Thank you. It will be a pleasure to work together again, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gregoire.
So thank you, Bruno. Raphael, do you have any comment, question?
Question, maybe not. Can you? Yeah. So is that really? No. Maybe I go there. Yeah. First, I want to thank you all like to participate to this jury and this defense. It's not easy to do it by video, but I think Gregoire did a great job, and all of you as well. This PhD really this remind me once a colleague recommended me a student, and he said he was lacking academic talent. I don't know how to translate, but I think Gregoire is a particular case of somebody that has a dense concentration of what we can call academic talent. So I cannot translate that. I don't know if somebody can in English, because he has a very good skills to work with very different groups, and then he showed really that by going to Lagos and Douala, Epoch, Lund, with a very different culture and person. So he really showed that he is very easy at that, and also scientific skills, which is part of this academic talent. He has a very creative ideas, and also methodological, because it's something to use a tool, it's something to develop a tool, and Gregoire did very big steps in this development in different techniques. So this is something I think very important for academic career. And then I have to mention, Bruno talked about how difficult is it to work far from his family, but also in terms of science, like a PhD, IRD grants are a bit funny, because you have to spend 6 months in Cameroon and 6 months in Europe, let's say. So actually, all these IRD grants, it's actually, well, I will not say half, but it's close to that, because when he was in Cameroon, he was working a lot with like teaching, I think, supervising students. So actually, he did all this work in maybe not half, but like something close to that for 3 years. So that's even more impressive. And yeah, so again, he has the capacity to integrate new concepts and new tools, and he's like easy with that, very flexible. I already said that. And I think this PhD has a very, I'm the supervisor, so I cannot really congratulate Gregoire, but I think, yeah, he made some very big steps, like on an international level. So I think he can be proud of his work. Yeah, with like on video development, I think he's one of the best in the world in this development. And also in terms of scientific results, it was not easy. What he did geographically to work with different teams, he did it also disciplinary. He like to study Guinea waves, like regional oceanography, impact on coastal morphodynamics. This is not something common. So he had to interact with some colleagues here at Lagos working on, like Julien Joanneau, working on regional oceanography. So it's not, he made this gap between these two communities that have not the same terminology and scales in mind. So it was also not easy, and he did it. So it's great. Yeah, with so Kelvin wave as a fundamental science. So I think it was a big outcome to see this impact of intra-seasonal sea level impact on the coast, and also to have this integrated approach with human settlement impact and so on. So just yeah, congratulations. It was a pleasure to work with you over this PhD time. So yeah, thanks. So it was not a question.
No, but it was very good. Okay, so it's my turn. I would like first to really thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in this jury. So you and also Raphael. It's not exactly my field, but your manuscript was very, very pleasant to read. I learned a lot. And I was also very impressed by all your results. And finally, I'm also very happy to have the opportunity to work with you very soon. So I have only one question, which is, as you know, I'm interested by coastal sea level variations. So with video systems, up to which distance to the coast will we be able to monitor the sea level variations? And do you think that there is a way to increase this distance in the near future?
Okay, thank you for the question. In fact, the distance depends on the camera setting. So if the camera is too higher, we have a lot of information. So everything depends on the field of view. Everything depends on the bathymetry. And so the local condition of the local environment condition and local setting of the camera is depend on that. So it will also depend on the depth of closure, which can change between the different type of area. Maybe I just test the code to Grand Popo data. This will be interesting to test on other field to know what are the limitations and what are the improvement.
Okay, so you will say that in Grand Popo, in the case of Grand Popo, it's less than 1 kilometer.
Yes, it's less than 1 kilometer. It's about we got the crusher stack was about 700 meters, and we work on approximately 300 meters in the area of interest. This was 300 meters. So maybe if we can correct with the paper of Bouvier, if we can correct the camera movement and all the other type of error, we can go further, maybe to 1 or 2 kilometers.
Okay.
The main point is that we need to correct all the different type of error. The error proxy are a good beginning, but we need to better incorporate them in the filtering.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there is no more question, we should maybe now move to the deliberation and then come back later to give you the results. So we need to go to the other webinar, Raphael?
Yeah, I guess, because otherwise we'll have to kick the others out.
Okay.
There's public still. No? There's no audience?
No.
Ah, if there's only one, that's fine.
Well,
23 participants, I see.
Yes, they are 15.
Can we kick them out? No, but otherwise we move rapidly, no?
Maybe I can.
Because they can stay there and
yes, you can.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we move. We meet on the other webinar. Okay, see you.
Okay. Can we have a 2-minute break, please?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
For a coffee, just 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bon.
I think they get the right. Or do you have to stay out?
Maybe you can leave.
You are coming back.
Yeah.
I think it is un problème de bureau.
Bruno, tu peux couper en fait, tu le remets le son.
Oui, c'est bon.
Thank you.
Gregoire, it will be the end of the suspense, at least for today. So yes, I just have to say that we unanimously agree, give you the title of Doctor of the University of Toulouse, and we also unanimously congratulate you for all the work you have done, for your presentation, for the clarity of your answers, and for everything. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry not to be with you at the moment.
I can say something?
Yes.
So what will you do now?
So yes. First, I would like to thank all the people that has followed the presentation. My family, my wife, my son, my director, Professor Tomedi, my colleague in Cameroon, my colleague here, Erwin, my supervisor, Raphael and Bruno Castel. In fact, I have many people to thank. All my collaborators here in Toulouse, all my collaborators in Cameroon, all the guys I know in Lund, in Bordeaux, everywhere around the world. So many thanks for giving me the opportunity to work with you. And I hope that we will continue to work again. Actually, I think I will stay here for 2 months again to work on the sea level while I will waiting for my PhD diploma. And I think actually I will go back to Cameroon on September to achieve some my position at the university, and maybe and maybe we will have many other projects on which we are going to work. So thank you very much for all. Thank you, Madame the President. Thank you, Edouard. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregoire.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.
And we cannot toast with you, which is the usual tradition, but we'll think about that anyway. So unfortunately, we cannot have a drink with you, but sometime in the future. Thank you, Florence, Jan, Raphael, Kwesi, Magnus, and Bruno as well, and Olusegun. And we'll keep in touch. Kwesi, I hope I'll visit Ghana next year, so I'll definitely come over and see you. It will be a pleasure.
I'll be very happy to see you. I'll be very happy to meet you. So please let me know anytime you're in Ghana.
I will definitely. I will keep in touch with you. And Gregoire will keep in touch as well. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And thank you very much to everybody. Thank you, Raphael, for inviting me, and I'm very grateful. And I thank everybody. Looking forward to more meetings and more discussions on our coast. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. It was a
Nice
pleasure.
discussion. Yeah. Thanks all. We have Deco, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you.
Dr. Abesolo.
Yeah. We have to get it there.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Congratulations.
Cameroon.